Hello and welcome to the Brook Street Boys.
Welcome back to episode 2 of the Brook Street Boys. Today we have a special guest. Please welcome Mr. White.
Hello, thank you for having me on your podcast. Just to say, give you a bit of background in terms of the teaching that I do. I'm mainly biology and environmental science. In actual fact, when I first arrived here, I was maternity cover, so I sort of sneaked in through the back door, as it were, and I ended up teaching that particular year. I taught biology, chemistry, physics, maths, financial studies.
That's a mix. My mum got in the school the same way through maternity cover, and she's been here ever since.
Yeah, no, I fancied working at the King's School, and so saw an opportunity and regretted it since.
Well, clearly it's worked out.
It certainly has.
Yeah.
Okay, so we also have our usual trio. Hello from myself, Tommy.
Oh yeah. Hello.
That's Zack, and then we have Tom as well, as per usual. So let's get straight into it.
So, where did your passion for biology start?
I guess, unsurprisingly, school. Childhood, I lived on a farm, so I was surrounded by birds, wildlife, all those sorts of things. I used to love sort of swimming in ponds and that sort of thing when I was little. Those are the days when nobody sort of cared about you jumping in water. Health and safety didn't seem to be an issue with my parents. So I used to get out, cycle across country to see friends, all those sort of things. But really, at school, I had a teacher called Dr. Slater. We nicknamed him Dr. Cox, and I've got no idea why. But he was brilliant. I think he was brilliant in the sense of education. In terms of teaching for exams, he was pretty hopeless, because he just used to go off and teach us about whatever he thought was interesting, whatever he thought was important, and then we had to sort of work out what of that we needed for the actual exam. So from that side of it, it was a different time, but it was brilliant because the stuff that he talked about was really interesting. He was microbiology, genetics were big with him. He was sort of, and this was, I hate to say, a number of decades ago. So the genetics side of it, he was kind of ahead of the field a little bit in terms of teaching what he was teaching. So it was really interesting, and yeah, all of us loved it. The lab was filled as well with sort of animals and wildlife and lots of different things. So that, definitely, I think Dr. Slater can take a lot of credit.
That's a great answer.
What kind of animals were in the lab?
So the big one that we used to joke about were the hamsters.
Right.
We had hamsters in there, and of course, then they're not necessarily quiet as well.
Yeah.
So disruption in lessons seemed to come more from the animals than it did from anything else. He had stick insects. They were quite often out and around in the labs as well.
Yeah.
I think that was more to do with pupils in previous lessons than the stick insects themselves. We had wormeries. He had plants, he had an aquarium as well, so sometimes, depending on, I think their holiday care was not quite as good as it necessarily should have been.
Right.
There seemed to be a turnaround every summer, so the long holiday, so sometimes you'd have sort of terrapins in there, and then suddenly you'd get back in September and it seemed to be fish. So what happened to the terrapins in the meantime, I don't know. But it was a real active lab, and we had other biology teachers, it wasn't just Dr. Slater, we had other ones. But his was the room. His room was, and to give you another insight, and this wasn't actually Dr. Slater. We had one time where we walked into the biology lab. This was with Mr. Earl, and on the front bench, he'd actually linked some other desks with it. And on the front bench, there was just this big cloth over this mound. He then proceeded to pull that off to reveal a dead calf that a local farmer had donated. Unfortunately, a friend of mine, Martin, collapsed at that point. He just fainted straight out. So that was also exciting. But he then, once we dealt with Martin and essentially removed him from the room, but the sort of nurse, we then, Mr. Earl then proceeded to dissect the whole thing. Something again which just wouldn't be allowed to do.
Yeah.
But there was lots of sort of things going on. We didn't. I mean, it was about unusual. We didn't really have any trips. I don't remember any trips, particularly at school. It wasn't that sort of thing. But what went on in the lab certainly was quite involving.
Yeah. Okay, so what did you do for university?
I did environmental biology.
Right.
So it was at Liverpool University. Really good school of biology there. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, although it was environmental biology, I actually did quite a lot of genetics because I was interested in that side of it. So you, as with most university courses, you start doing a bit of everything, but then you can focus in towards the end.
Yeah.
And obviously with it being environmental biology, I was really looking at how human impacts on the environment and what sort of, what we could do to improve biodiversity, those sorts of things. My dissertation was an unusual one. I did a dissertation on allotments.
Right.
Wow.
Which was a fantastic choice because it meant that when I went out to do my research, I basically sat down, had cups of teas and biscuits with, old men. Essentially, they'd just sort of feed you. They'd give you vegetables as well that I could sort of use in the house. So, but it was basically I was looking at the idea of allotments as corridors, and therefore seeing what wildlife you found in cities around allotments,
Right.
in gardens, as opposed to in other parts of the city where we didn't have that sort of corridor from outside of the city in. And it did show there was a big impact. Anytime you've got something where you allow things to just grow, which happens on allotments, it really helps with biodiversity.
Well, that explains the garden, and for any students that are interested, make sure at any opportunity you get. Obviously, that all ended up with you coming here as a teacher at King's, teaching multiple different subjects as you've already told us, but what would you say is your favourite moment as a teacher here?
Yeah, I think particularly now I've got a role within the sixth form, I'd have to say that A-level results day is my favourite day of the year.
Yeah.
To see the results that we get are fantastic, so that's obviously a complete joy. But I think the real satisfaction comes from where they end up going.
Yeah.
We've got high achieving but aspirational students. This year we ended up, I think we had sort of 7 places at Cambridge, we took up 6.
Wow.
And 3 at Oxford. I think we had 3 medics as well. And then on top of that, going to all, as I say, I went to Liverpool University, seeing the people going to Liverpool, going to Exeter, all these fantastic universities around doing courses that are just perfect for them as well. I think that's really important, that they're going somewhere to do the subject they want to do.
Yeah.
So I love that particular day.
Yeah.
And even sometimes you might have the odd student where they've not quite got, but then the joy there comes from just finding out and working out what it is they can do. We're a very competitive, the students come out of this incredibly competitive. We can always find people, something that they need, want to do somewhere. So yeah, I think that's probably my favourite day. Obviously it's in the holidays as well, so that might help.
Adds to it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm certainly nervous for it. I don't know, it's
I
just
think that makes 3 of us.
a bit terrifying, knowing, you have a long run up to see how are you going to do.
Yeah, it's less terrifying the closer you get, because of course you will do all that work
Yeah.
between now and then. You kind of know what's coming, give or take.
Yeah.
People walk out of those exams, the preparation that you get here is fabulous. You will have an idea, and also people that haven't prepared kind of know that as well.
Yeah.
So there's not many people that are just completely bowled over one way or the other. It's a good day.
Thank you. So there's a new subject, A-level environmental science. So other year 13s didn't get an opportunity to study it, but it's now for year 12s. So what is it? Why study it?
Okay, so first of all, apologies to year 13. Just came a bit too late for you.
So offended.
Why study it? It's a great subject. It's a great subject because it's all around us the whole time. At the moment in the news, we've got Hurricane Milton over in Florida, and obviously why is that happening? Well, it's to do with the changing in temperatures, it's to do with changes in terms of Gulf Stream winds. All of these things are having an impact, massive impact on lives around the world. So that for me is why to do it. The really plus that I like about the course is not only is it telling us what's going on, it's all about solutions. Which is what your generation is going to have to work out, is how we're going to solve all these problems, all these environmental issues that we've got going on. We've got to somehow come up with a solution where we can continue to live, if not exactly the way we're doing, in a similar sort of way to the way we're doing. People don't like change, but we can find alternatives that allow us to continue without destroying the planet, decreasing biodiversity, all those things. So I think it's great from that. Obviously, there is overlap. And in fact, it's not just biology that there's an overlap. There's an overlap in terms of mathematics, there's an overlap in terms of sociology, overlap in terms of geography. If we focus on the sort of overlap with biology, I would probably say the way to think of the two subjects as being different to one another is biology is very much about the specifics.
Right, yeah.
So you're looking at the biochemistry, cellular structure, and then you're sort of building on that to work out how that impacts on physiology, ecology, etc.
Yeah.
So I think that's how biology is, really about specifics. Now, whilst there are still specifics in terms of terminology within environmental science, I think it's got a much more holistic approach of things. So it's looking at everything working together and looking at it as a whole, these big ecosystems, how they function, how organisms within them function, and then looking at the biology of it in that way. We do have ecology. There's a big section within Year 13 biology that looks at the ecology things. It's a massive overlap that's direct, but I would say that's the sort of difference between those two subjects.
Okay.
I think they complement each other well.
Okay, so I think we should move away from biology and go a bit more general. So what is like a funny story that you have? Because Miss Bieber has tons, so surely you must have a couple.
No pressure there. So when you talk, if I talk about, should I talk about teaching careers?
Go for it.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So funny incidents whilst teaching. I do remember in my teacher training. So this is at Nottingham University, and I was in those days. You had sort of thrown in at the deep end. You were teaching students science lessons, full sort of practicals. I was doing a steam engine demo, and it'd been put out for me at the front, and we were given these little sort of basic firelighter type things that you put into this engine, light them, and away you go. The teacher was meant to be observing me, had been sort of observing me, but I think had to do a bit of marking, so went into the prep room, and so I'm sort of left there with the class, and I'm trying to get this steam engine going, and I am fueling this thing, and there's no movement of the wheels, so I keep putting a bit more fuel in, keep getting stoking it up, getting this going. The temperature at this point has got hot enough that paper close to it catches light. So the bench goes up, and I've suddenly got this, so I then managed to grab, I've got fire blankets, so I grab a fire blanket, I'm smashing it on the where all the flames are, the front row, doing that. So the children are loving this, by the way. So the teacher that's gone into the prep room, here's the commotion, comes in, the fire's been put out at this point, and all that's there is just these sort of ash, little floaters that are just coming down, and this steaming hot fire engine. That it turns out the reason why the steam engine wasn't working is because it had no water in it. So all I was doing was just making a really hot metal case hotter and hotter by heating it. So that was a nice disastrous sort of teaching moment. I think I can't compete. Sorry, Miss Bieber, you can't compete with Miss Bieber.
Well, we know that you're a teacher of many topics. Some might say a jock of all trades, but there used to be a photography club that was running a lot. Obviously, you were the head of that. And we've been wondering if it's ever going to be started up again, and where your passion for it all began, really.
Yeah, so photography was one of those things. Again, it's a school thing. We had a photography club at school. That was in the days of film, so there was no digital at that point. We had a sort of dark room that we could process the films in as well. It was just that was interesting cameras at that point sort of started. Always taking pictures, but then the processing side of it, because with film photography, you kind of need that equipment. So I had it at school, but then you never get it again. You never get the ability to sort of process your films unless you've got a lot of money and you can have your own dark room or some sort of access to that. So I still took pictures, but didn't really. And it was only then when the sort of digital age came in that you then realised actually you could do sort of post-production on it, and also because there's no film involved, you could take lots of pictures. and not be too concerned about the fact that some of the quality wasn't going to be great, because you weren't wasting film.
Yeah.
So it was really digital age that I sort of got back into it. Never had expensive cameras, but really enjoyed that side of it. So that's where my sort of passion again was at school, but then reignited when I realised opportunities that digital age was bringing in. I think some people are a bit snooty about digital photography, but actually it just allows everybody to do it and do it really well and experiment with it without that cost being there in the background, which I think there used to be with film photography. In terms of photography club, the cameras are now up with the art department.
Oh wow.
So, because I thought at the time, so now with being head of year, and I do some revision sessions as well, I've got 2 lunchtimes straight away that are involved in sort of head of year duties, and so it's just that sort of time at lunchtime that I found a little bit harder to sort of run the photography club.
That's perfect.
So that's about all the questions that we have for you today, sir. Thank you very much for coming on to our podcast and answering them. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, listen, it's been a pleasure this end as well. You're very welcome, and I'm very impressed. Very professional setup. I love what you're doing. Keep the podcast going, and hopefully get some more interesting people on.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you all next time.
Bow out.